Lately, I've been spending a lot of time studying the book of Genesis, particularly, the first few chapters, of the book of Genesis. And I have discovered a lot of things. New things. And one of those things that I'm going to, that I have discovered is the one I will be sharing with you today. So basically, the title of my sermon is The Identical Life of Humans and Trees. I don't know if any one of you have done this study. This is a very fascinating study. The identical life of humans and trees. Very similar. And I hope that we can learn a lot, from this, from this study. When you talk about the creation, two of the most important creations in the Garden of Eden are the trees of life and the tree, what's the other one? The tree of, the knowledge of good and evil. All right? So, I'm talking about the Garden of Eden. These are two of the most important beings or created beings in the Garden of Eden. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But have you ever wondered why God used trees, or why the author of the book used trees to illustrate this? Right? The tree of life. And the other one is the tree of test that leads to what? To death. Have you ever wondered? When you talk about the Bible is one big story, all right? That's why you cannot separate Old Testament to the New Testament. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do right now is I'm just trying to lay the ground. Because what I'm thinking is I'm going to connect my next sermon to our study also today, all right? So I'm trying to lay the ground before I make my point, all right? So when you talk about the Bible, it is a one big, long story. From Genesis until the book of Revelation. You cannot separate it. All right? Because they are connected. And when you talk about, and when you study the Bible, it has repeated scenes. Because the Bible has a major theme. What is the major theme of the Bible? It is about salvation. It's about God's love, right? But under this major theme of the Bible, you will find small themes, right? Small themes that support this major theme in the Bible. And when you study the Bible, particularly the first book, the book of Genesis, you will find repeated scenes, images, keywords that are meant to build a unified theme. That's why when you study the Bible, you have to be mindful of all those repeated words, repeated images. Because, it was purposefully or intentionally placed in there in order for the readers, like us, to see what the author is trying to convey. All right? So, one of the patterns that you will see is basically the parallel between humans and trees. Humans and trees. Right? So, going back to my question earlier, why do you think God used trees? To send this message that a tree could give life. And a tree could serve as a test that can lead someone to death. Are you folks with me? To answer that, the reason why he used trees is because of the identical or the close identity between the trees and humans, right? Because of the identical natures of trees and humans. So let us go back to the creation week and highlight the pattern that the author was trying to convey to prove my point. So what we're going to do is we're going to review God's creation. All right? So I call this the creation week and the humans and trees matching triads. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to review it. Okay, so what did God do in the first day? All right, we're trying to lay the ground, okay? What did God do on the first day? All right, so out of darkness, He created what? The light. All right, He created the light. There's one act on the first day. On the second day, what did God do? God separates the waters, all right? The waters. So what did He do is He separated the waters and He created a firmament. Some other translations would use a dome or a vault that separates the water, the water from above and from under. All right? So the water is separated and there's a dome here, right? And the author calls it the firmament or the sky on top. All right? So that is basically what happened on the second day, and there is only one act. But on the third day, there's two acts, two actions, all right? God causes the land to emerge out of the dome, right? I mean, out of the water from beneath. The land emerges, all right? So that is the first act. And the second act is, from the land, fruit trees, what happened? Emerge, right? And they bear fruits. Okay? So that is the first 3 days. Now let's go to the fourth day. The fourth day, there is also one act. Right? But this act corresponds the first day. You see the arrow there? All right? It corresponds the first day. And what was the creation on the fourth day? God fills the skies with the sun, moon, and stars. Remember, the first day, God created light out of darkness, right? But on the fourth day, He created the sun, moon, and stars. This basically creates what? Day and night. It created time. It created seasons, all right? So, it corresponds on the first day. See the parallel there? All right, and on the fifth day, it corresponds on what? On the second day, all right? But there's also one act there. God fills the water and skies with fish and birds. What was created on the second day? He separated the water. Where can you find all these fishes and the birds? From the firmament, from the sky, and from the water. Are you folks with me? All right? So, it corresponds, the fifth day corresponds the second day. And on the sixth day, all right, similar to the third day, there were two acts here. All right? All right? So, the first act is what? God created the animals to fill the land. So as you can see here, from void to something, and from something to another thing. All right? So that is basically how God created the world. Sixth day, God created animals to fill the land. That is the first act. Right? It corresponds the creation on the third day. And what is the second act here? The second act here is it causes humans to emerge from the ground. Now, going back to the main theme that we're trying to locate here, we're trying to locate the similarity between the nature of humans and trees. The trees were created on the second act on the third day, and humans were created on the second act on the sixth day. And as you can see, the similarity between the two is both of them emerged from where? from the ground. Emerge from the ground. All right? There's more. All right? So, this symmetry should set the stage for us to begin associating trees with humans in the biblical story. That's why, you'll see here the pattern and the repetition the author was trying to imply to drive his point. And that is basically the relationship between the trees and humans. Because when you talk about the origin of both of these, they came from where? From the ground and emerges, from the ground, right? So, if you look at the life of humans, because you will find basically this repeated, if you study the whole Bible, you'll see this pattern being repeated over and over again. And if you look at the life of humans and trees, you will find the similarities. And I highlighted this here, right? First, before I mention this, if you look at the first similarity is both humans and trees are upright. Right? Upright. Of course, sometimes they fall down, but a lot of times they're upright with their heads up there. Okay? That is a number of similarity. And not only that, which I did not include in the PowerPoint, another similarity is when you look at the tubular branching pattern of our lungs. It resembles the root system of many trees. What does tree do? It produces what? Oxygen. And what does our lungs do? It has something to do with oxygen as well, right? You see the similarity there. Another similarity here, this I highlighted here. Both of this, the humans and trees, their life are given by God. It came from God. All right? Both of them have seeds. All right? By the way, if you study a seed or the seed in its original, word or language in Greek, the term, it means, the sperm, it means seed. The sperm of human. It means seed. All right? So that's another similarity. Right? Both of them, since they have seeds, can generate what? Life by producing seeds. You see the pattern here? The similarities, right? Right? So trees, if you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 12, after they were created, trees were created to what? To bear fruits. All right? And if you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, men were commanded to what? To be fruitful. You see the similarity there, folks? This is not coincidence, my dear brothers and sisters. It was by design. It was designed that way by the author of the book in order for you and me to see the similarities and connect the dots. Because the author is trying to imply something that trees can be like man or human. All right? So that is the similarities. Right? That's why even in the Bible, all throughout the Bible, particularly in the book of Psalms and Proverbs, and of course Isaiah, you will see here that different authors of the Bible, since they see the similarities, they use this similarity to what? To give their message. Psalm chapter 1, verse 3, the author says, like a tree planted by the streams of water that yields fruits. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 3, they will be called oaks of righteousness. Right? What else? Of course, referring to a person. Psalm 92, verse 12, the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. Right? And Proverbs chapter 11, verse 30, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. You see that the connection there? The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. So to summarize the human tree narrative in the Bible, here's what you will find. If you study the whole Bible, folks, here's what you will find. there are times when people would meet, when you look at the similarity and how it was used in the Bible, there are times where, people would meet God at trees in high places and either succeed or fail the test. Whose story that reminds you of this? A servant of God by a tree, met by God. How about Genesis chapter 18, verse 1? It says, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre. And some author believed that this tree is an oak tree. All right? Right? Another one. Trees are often used to illustrate a moment of decision and testing for humans. And whose story reminds you of this? How about the story in Judges chapter 6? The story of Gideon. Remember, he was hiding, right? Then the angel of the Lord, he was pressing wine. Then all of a sudden, the angel of the Lord appeared and came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah. The picture of God's servant in a big tree is always there. Right? Is always there. Right? They're also used to illustrate a moment of communion with God. By the way, if you study the tree and bush or bushes in the original language in Hebrew, they're almost the same. All right? That's why I put it there. Because it says here, one of the things that you will find there is they are also being used to illustrate a moment of communion with God. You remember the story of Moses? Right? Where God commissioned him in front of a burning bush, right? Good example. The last one is trees historically have been used as illustrations of eternal life because they possess the power within themselves to self-perpetuate. You have to remember, the life did not generate in their own. It was given to them. And since the life was given to them, God has given them, both of them, both human and trees, the ability to what? To generate and perpetuate life. Perpetuate life. And this is a beautiful thing, about this. That's why, if you talk about trees, trees are important in the Bible narrative. So now, before I drive the main point of this study, let us first identify what was the original purpose of God to man. Okay, because I have a big point that I would like you, to understand later. But before we go into that one, let us first identify the purpose, because I would like to connect this to God's purpose, to God's original purpose for human, which is the main theme of our study, the youth and the kids study this month. Right? In order for us to be able to identify that, of course, we have to go back to the story of creation again. So the question is, what did God do after creating the heavens and the earth? What did He do? All right? According to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the earth, of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. All right? So basically what he's basically saying is, after He created everything, He created man, and He said, you have the dominion over them. Now what's this? The same charge was repeated in verse 28 by saying, be fruitful. The same charge given to the trees to bear fruits, right? Be fruitful and what? And multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. When you talk about the word fruitful, what does it mean? What does it convey? What does it convey? Sometimes we always associate this with what? Bearing child. Be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth. Right? But when you talk about, you have to expand it a little bit. Right? Because this way you will be able to understand why you and I are here. What does it mean to be fruitful? It's not only childbearing. It means what? It means breathing out life. You know, we are living creatures. We inhale life from God because He is the giver of life. We inhale life. And what do we do with that life? We exhale it out in order for the people and the creatures around us would experience that same life. That way, we are basically reflecting the image of God because the image of God is giving us life. And after we receive this life, we are also giving it out. Right? Reflecting the image of God. Generating good influence and multiplying it. That is basically the meaning of the word fruitful and multiplying it. Be a good influence by producing this beautiful life that you have received from God. And if you go to chapter 2, verse 9, you will find there that after God created everything, by the way, the first chapter of the Bible, of Genesis, from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, up to Genesis chapter 2, verse 3, that is, the original plan of God. And if you go to chapter 2, verses 4 and on, that is basically what happened. It messes up the whole plan of God, right? But He showed us His beautiful plan, His original plan, right? So after God created the world, He created, the garden. He created this garden called the Garden of Eden. And in verse 15, you will find there God says, in the Bible says, God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to what? To tend and keep it. So this way you will see that the main job of Adam and Eve is to take care of the garden, to take care of the world. And that is you and my job as well. Right? But I would like to highlight something here. Because we know that these two verbs, to tend and to keep, can also be found in the book of Leviticus. Right? Because this is basically the same word that was used to describe the work of the priests in the sanctuary. In the sanctuary. So you can imagine that this world is like a sanctuary, and you and my job is what? To take care of this sanctuary. But the reality is, this sanctuary or this world that God created is not in a perfect state. That's why our job is more complicated. That's why we have to work more, right? We have to work more. That's why if you're going to summarize it, what is the purpose? Why God created Adam and Eve, based from what we have studied. The purpose why God created Adam and Eve is in order for them to beautify the world, to take care of this world. That is in the Bible, my dear brothers and sisters. I did not create this. It's in the Bible, to beautify the world, right? To take care of the world. Now that we have identified the purpose, why you and I are created by God, I want to talk from the perspective of a tree. All right? We're switching, folks. We have laid the ground. We saw the similarity between humans and trees. And we saw the original purpose of God, why He created Adam and Eve. Now let's go back and switch from the perspective of a tree. All right? Since humans are like trees, my question to all of you is, what kind of tree are you? Are you folks still with me? Can I hear an amen from you? What kind of tree are you? We know that trees have different functions and purposes. Please, stay with me. This is the most important section of my sermon. We know that trees have different functions and purposes. But if you categorize them, they will fall in only two categories. One gives life, And the other one leads to what? To death. That's why, going back to what I was saying earlier, two of the most important created beings in the Garden of Eden are what? The tree of life and the knowledge of the good and evil. Now watch this. A lot of times, when we look at this story, listen to me folks very carefully. When we look at this story, especially in the story in the Garden of Eden, we see ourselves on this side of the trees. All right? On this side of the trees, we are the ones who will make choices between life and death. Tell me if I'm wrong. A lot of times, we see ourselves as Adam and Eve. There's nothing wrong with that. But this moment, I would like to change your perspective. I would like to change your perspective. Let's approach or attack this from a different angle or from a different point of view, right? Because although it is important, for us to have that perspective of Adam and Eve, it is oftentimes this mindset leads to what? Listen to me, self-preservation and self-righteousness. I'm not saying it's wrong, okay? But a lot of times I recognize the danger that if you are looking at a tree from the perspective of Adam and Eve, this mindset leads to self-preservation or self-righteousness. That's why I would like to invite you to change the perspective, right? And to see yourself from the perspective of the tree. You are not Adam and Eve this time. You are the trees. Are you folks with me? You are the trees, right? According to the Bible, God placed the trees at the very center of the Garden of Eden. Are you folks with me? In that particular area, the most important part is the Garden of Eden. And at the very heart of the Garden of Eden is a place where you can find not just the tree of life, but also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All right? So everyone, okay, let's try to imagine. Use our imagination. At the center of the garden is the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Everyone that will go and try to check and see the tree of life, they will also see the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Or in other words, I put it, a tree of test that leads to where? Leads to death. One tree leads to life, and one tree leads to death. Are you folks with me? Are you following what I'm trying to say here? I would like to communicate what I'm trying to say here because, it's going to be useless if you guys don't understand what I'm trying to say here. All right? So, now, that means, every opportunity for you and me to give life is also an opportunity for us, or a chance for you and me to ruin it. Did you guys see it? I find this very fascinating because, actually, to be honest with you, I know that God gave me this message. I've been studying it for, I would say, 2 weeks. But not until Thursday, I still don't have this connection because I'm always looking from the perspective of Adam and Eve. That's why I want you guys to imagine, and I want you to see that you are the trees. And when you talk about that us being the trees, you have the opportunity to what? To give life, and you also have the opportunity to what? To breathe out death. So when people come to you, just like in the Garden of Eden, they want to see the tree of life because you are a tree. When they come to you, there's your big opportunity to breathe out life through your influence, through your good works, through the things that you say. And there's the opportunity as well for you to what? To ruin it. To ruin the life of a person by leading that person to death. You know, we have to take this seriously, folks. You know, because sometimes we have these good intentions, because we want that person to see life through us. But the reality is sometimes, maybe the words that we're using to convey life is destructive. Maybe the relationships that we're bringing out there does not connect. Good intentions. Maybe you want to share the truth. And sometimes our understanding of truth is a statement. Truth, folks, is not a statement. Is not a written word or written words or written statement. Truth is Jesus, a person. Truth is a person. That's why, my dear brothers and sisters, you know, this is very, very important. And I want to emphasize this. I'm so sorry if I'm taking so much time here, because I want you to see this. You know, this time you are not just Adam and Eve looking at the trees of life and death. You are the trees. God has given you the opportunity to give out life, to give out good influence. But then at the same time, you have the opportunity to ruin life as well through the things that you're doing. It always reminds me of Manny Pacquiao. He says, great power comes with great responsibility. Right? That's why, you know, we are reminded by this author, the power to give life carries with it the potential to take it away. We must tread carefully and responsibly in our actions. If our action does not reflect the character of Jesus, even what you're saying maybe is in accordance with the Bible, it's useless, my dear brothers and sisters. You have to remember that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It is basically what we do, right? And that is part of our job as humans created by God, to take care of this world, of this dying world. You know, don't look past this world, my dear brothers and sisters, because sometimes we're saying, my world, you know, my kingdom is not of this earth. You know, my life is for heaven. That's why the tendency is we try to avoid the earth because we want to be in heaven. You know, that is not the reason, you know, that isn't the purpose why God created all of us. God placed you in a certain situation in order for you to be a light, to be a salt in that certain situation, my dear brothers and sisters. So don't avoid it. Be a salt. Be a salt. Be that light. Be a good influence through your words, through your actions, and through our lifestyle. Right? That's why if you're going to summarize it, what is the purpose why you and I are here? The purpose is for you and me to be a tree of life. Tree of life. And that means to give life. To plant seeds of good influence. Motivated by love. Motivated by life. And my dear brothers and sisters, it is a choice that we make before God. And a choice that we make for others. But then, there's another part of the story, right? You have to remember that the life that we are doing, even though we can generate and perpetuate life, is just given. It's just given, it's a gift. And according to Genesis chapter 2, verses 10 to 14, a river flowed from the land of Eden, watering the garden and then dividing into 4 branches. The first branch called the Pishon, followed by what? Followed by the Gihon, the Tigris, and Euphrates. I'm not going to read it anymore. So, there's a river from the garden, and it branches into 4 rivers. And what happens is, all these rivers that I mentioned, it watered the whole region. It watered the whole region. The stream is the source of life of all the trees. Not only in the Garden of Eden, but in all the trees in that territory. My dear brothers and sisters, since we are all trees, we'll need to be watered by the streams of life. Right? That's why according to Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 7 and 8, this is going to be my last slide, last text. I read, "Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by the water, that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought, and never fails to bear fruit." My dear brothers and sisters, in our life, we have a choice to make. It's either to be a tree of life or to be a tree that leads to death. This is a choice that we have to make before God and for others. May God bless all of us today.